Presented by The Hockey Shop, source for sports, thehockeyshop.com. This is In Goal Radio, the podcast. Middle of summer, but it feels like it's been one of those ones where we're fast forwarding at record speed towards the start of the National Hockey League season, in the sense that this is a compacted summer coming off the late start or late finish of the professional campaign. Darren Millard in Tokyo for one final podcast episode, along with the two boys from the founding part of the In Goal magazine, Kevin Woodley and David Hutchison. And how's that whole situation over at the Hockey Shop going on with the summer sale?
Well, that's why you should be at thehockeyshop.com ASAP, because the Back to Hockey sale is on. It's going fast. And some of those door crasher sales that we teased last week, half off pads from CCM and Warrior, there are still some left. Not maybe a ton of stock left, but there's still a little left. 2-for-1 sticks, still a few options there. And a reminder that the sale doesn't end with the door crashers. 20 to 50% off all around the store. So make sure you check it out. The entire goalie store, whether it's in person at the Hockey Shop or online at thehockeyshop.com like Darren does. Still lots of great savings ahead. And of course, if you're not looking for discounted items, you want the newest stuff, they've got that too. And if you have any questions, you can always ask Cam. It's about more than just having gear and grid prices at the Hockey Shop. It's about having people that know how to find the right gear for you. So if you've got any questions, make sure you hit them up and check them out both online and in person if you happen to be blessed like me and Hutch and live in the Lower Mainland / Vancouver Island.
Big shout out to Jhonas Enroth, who is our feature interview brought to you by Sensorina this week. He listens to the podcast all the time. So hello, Jhonas. Thanks for stopping by and making your time available with Kevin Woodley. And I don't know whether Jhonas would have an opinion on this or not, but Hutch, if you could have 2-for-1 on any piece of equipment, keep in mind, some of them pieces of equipment would do you no good to have two of them in a sale. Which piece would you go 2-for-1 and jump all over that?
I guess I can't do something crazy like 2-for-1 on pads because I could sell one of the sets and it's the most valuable piece of gear.
You have to use it. I was thinking the same thing. Like, it'd be great to have 2 sets of pads, but really that's kind of a waste unless you're a National Hockey League and you're one for practice, one for games. But just the average Joe, what pieces of equipment would you go 2-for-1?
Okay, so average Joe beer leaguer.
Yeah.
I'm going sticks because it's the only thing I'd use more than one of in a season. So that's pretty simple there. And by the time my gear breaks down, the industry has turned 180 degrees and the technology is completely different. So having two of something now means I'll be obsolete somewhere down the road when I finally need another set of gear. So beer leaguer, sticks, 100%, no question at all. Goalie parent, I've reached the stage where my kid goes through more than one glove in a season. So it's definitely the glove.
Wow. What about you, Woody?
Well, I think Hutch made all the good points on pads. Like your automatic, your brain goes to the most expensive thing, but the reality is, you're not going through them fast enough, especially as a rec leaguer, that by the time you need the second set, there's something new out there, which kind of makes me think of the golf industry, right? Like, things change so fast.
Yeah.
But the one item I bought from a golf side, extra set of, was the wedges before they got rid of the grooves and they made the grooves illegal. So I'm going to go with a chest protector that I know is a little oversized and might not stay that way for much longer. So we've talked about how I love the CCM Premier chest protector, and in past times when it's been on sale at the Hockey Shop, I'm like, ooh, to me, that's my wedges with illegal grooves. I love how it fits. I love how it feels, and I love how it presents so big. And as NHL rules that taper chest protectors sort of start to trickle down to retail a little bit, I think that massive looking unit is going to get harder and harder to find. So I'm all in on the double chest protectors.
So I'm a saver. Woody's a cheater. How about you, Darren? What are you?
I'm going 2 buckets. I want 2 masks and
really
get them all tricked out. That's what I would do. If I could get 2-for-1, I'm going masks, and that just allows me to get a little more creative with paint jobs. Not all the pressure on just one bucket.
Well, and if you wear it out, it just ends up on that, where you can't see it right now in Japan, but that beautiful mask wall behind you when you're in the home offices in Vegas.
Yeah. See, now you're getting my vibe.
Yeah, I like it.
Can you talk to my better half just about that and how practical that really is?
I don't know that I'm one to speak to the better half about what's the right decision to make these days, but and especially when it comes to having gear littered around the house. My office looks the way it does because none of this stuff is allowed anywhere else in the house. Like I've got the downstairs sort of, I'd call it a man cave, but it's not. It's more for my teen daughters, a pool table, TV, like a nice area to have friends over. Not a single piece of hockey memorabilia. It's all shoved inside my small office because I'm not allowed to put it on display anywhere else. So I might not be the guy to go to get that permission, Darren.
Well, you guys are going to get your hockey fix. Net 360 camp is on the horizon. Hutch headed out to Kelowna for a few days.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been sort of a staple of our summers, Darren. And I don't know, is it 4 or 5 years now, Woody? I can't even remember that we've been privileged to go up and go to this unique camp put on by Alpha Hockey, Ray Petco and Adam Francilia for their clients. And really a goalie-centric camp where a number of NHL goaltenders and some small group of junior and NCAA goalies and then a bunch of their coaches come together in this really unique collaborative environment where everybody is there to work together and raise their games together, learn from each other, and become better goaltenders as a result. And we've been lucky to sort of be flies on a wall there for several years now, and looking forward to that opportunity again and connect with some of the guys who are up there and hopefully bring back a little bit of content to share with our In Goal Premium members as we've done over the last couple of years.
I want to say 2015 was the first one, Hutch, and so obviously we didn't go up last year with the pandemic. They had a much smaller camp, but so that's you're right, like 6 years that we've been invited up, and minus the pandemic, 5 years of great times, great goalie discussions and conversations and on ice teachings, and excited for the upcoming week.
Given that it's been a significant gap compared to a regular cycle, Hutch, what are you looking forward to when it comes to picking the brains of everybody at Net 360? Is it the latest technique? Is it fitness? Is it the idea of just being the mental part of the game and being focused? There's advancements that obviously have taken place over the last 24 months.
I don't think I usually go up there with a specific thing I'm going after, Darren. I think the thing that really stands out for me when I'm there is just the conversations that take place on the ice. It's not like a regular goalie camp where an instructor says, okay, here's the drill, here's what we're working on, here's the specific thing I want you to focus on, and maybe pick a few things that are details that need to be improved as the reps are going. What you'll see is an NHL goalie coach and an NHL goaltender talking probably with a colleague from another team or another organization and sharing, this is what I like to do in this situation, and here's why I like to do it. The discussions get much more in depth than what I'm used to seeing. So instead of, I want you to play it this way, you get this much more relaxed atmosphere where you'll hear a discussion about why they want to play a given situation in a particular way. Lots of back and forth, what I think it means to the team, what I think it means to your game. I mean, I'm thinking, for example, of one situation where Rob Tallis was talking about some post play. I think it was with James Reimer, and Freddie Brathwaite was there observing, as was I. And Rob was talking about wanting to play things a very specific way because, well, you might cover more if you do this, but we're not really willing to give this goal up because of how that's going to impact the team, versus if that goal is given up, well, that's okay. That's not quite the same sort of mental experience for the rest of the team. So some of those things you just don't get into when you're at a camp for kids or a camp even for junior goaltenders, where they're trying to be a whole lot more efficient. This is a much smaller group, and they've got more time. It's more relaxed. And so I think you really get to see some angles of some particular situations that we're just not used to being a part of some of those conversations. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm looking forward to just being surprised again, because there's always something new that I'm not ready for.
And those back and forths go beyond just goaltender to goaltender or goalie coach to goaltender. Like some of my favorite conversations are like Devin Dubnyk and Andrew Ladd as a shooter, sort of sitting there on one knee in the high slot while Devin's partner that year, can't remember if it was Eddie Lack or James Reimer were in the net. They were alternating nets, and your shooters are like Justin Schultz and Andrew Ladd, and guys who can really bring it. And Devin and Andrew sort of having a discussion about what each of them is looking for on that type of play, and sort of without the goalie union giving up too much information to the shooters, that back and forth on, hey, what are you looking for as a shooter here? What are you waiting for to happen? Was really fascinating. And also on the goalie side, like I think the best example I remember just thinking back is, Laurent Brossoit, who I think will be there this week now with the Vegas Golden Knights, Darren. But in earlier years, I think he was with Edmonton at the time, so pre-Jets, and a younger Chris Driedger, now with the Seattle Kraken, but he was in the Ottawa organization at the time. Two guys playing the same play. It was like a point shot slap pass down to the side of the net, completely differently. And it was Freddie Chabot, who had been with the Oilers but wasn't in the league at the time. He's now the goalie coach of the Minnesota Wild, walking and working with both of them and not necessarily saying one way was the right way, but sort of having this three-way conversation about why each guy did it their way. And so those are the ones I love, because as we say so many times, there's not just one way to play the position. And that was just, it jumps out at me as one of the best examples we've had of two guys on the ice in the net playing the same situation completely differently, and two guys that have had success doing so.
Net 360, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, was the first time that those bands came out, and it was Connor Hellebuck along the sideboards and working back and forth. Am I wrong on that?
It was the first time I saw it, and one of the things that I really enjoyed, that's Adam Francilia, who's done some great work for us over here at In Goal, was sort of transitioning some of the stuff that he does as part of the daily workout in the morning with the players and the goaltenders, transitioning that to some on ice work as well. And I have seen another goaltending coach out there who I think just wanted a little bit of extra fame and showed a photo of himself using this, and no, I'm the original. It's not the way the game works. It's not that one person does something and somebody else picks it up. I mean, Adam was just taking the work that he does and applying it on the ice, and I don't think it comes down to who's first or anything. But what I love about his work, and I guess it's another one of those on ice moments that really blew me away, is he's watching an NHL goaltender in full equipment, and we know how large that looks. And he watches the movement, and he said, actually, this is the particular muscle that is at a deficit right now. And this is why it's not functioning. And here's what it's doing for you. This isn't in spandex in a gym. It's through full equipment. And then he's able to take those physiological deficits that he can see and then apply them both off ice and on ice to transition your game. So the specificity was shocking. And again, another one of those sort of surprising moments for me. Up there, I wouldn't have known to ask those things, but just being able to be a fly on the wall, you pick up some great new things.
Yeah, I remember him first time, and it wasn't the Net 360 camp. He just came out to watch Braden Holtby on his last day working with Lyle Mast, and Scott Murray of the Washington Capitals was in town, and I was there doing the video. And Adam just showed up on the last day and watched Holtz work for, I want to say, two sets of drills, and afterwards, just an introduction and a quick hello, and just happened to ask, hey, like, I can't remember which muscle group it was. He's like, but it looks like this isn't firing for you. Like, and this is a goalie he's just watching move around on the ice in full equipment. And sure enough, recognizing that there was a muscle group that wasn't firing properly and was leading to a deficiency in the movement. And the other part of this, and this ties back to the Net 360 camp, where some cool moments over the past is taking that observation, working through drills off the ice to get the guys ready for play, and having that moment where it's like, okay, there's a deficiency or an imbalance in the movement pattern, looking for what's not firing, and then on hand, on site, doing the physio and doing the training with these guys is Dan Boss. And I remember him being like, okay, like, the two of them watching, I think it was Eddie Lack or Connor Hellebuck, do a wall squat, and they could see where he hit a certain range where things weren't firing. And it's like, okay, we'll take care of that in the sort of prehab, or before you go on the ice, we'll do a session. And Dan Boss makes it disappear as well in terms of his work on the sort of physio side of things. So when you go up there for this camp, you're not just on the ice with goalie coaches, you're off the ice with Adam, and you're also getting to work with, a guy in Dan Boss who, a lot of the goalies up there, James Reimer, from a concussion recovery standpoint, will tell you has saved his career. So it's kind of a whole package up there. And then Adam's wife is taking care of some very healthy eating, which can make for some awkward moments in the coach's room before a skate as it cleans out the system of some guys who might otherwise be living off burgers and beer. But other than that, very appreciated from those of us who are a little more health conscious. Just got to sort of tolerate the every once in a while in the coach's room. But it's a complete package when you get up there.
Darren, I think just to go back to Adam there for a second and Dan in a related way, we probably should go down this road for an episode one day, guys. But I've been asked a number of times, what is it that makes Adam different, or what is it that make other trainers? Maria would be one as well. What makes it goalie specific? Why is it so special? And I think that what Kevin was just describing there, contrast that to going into the gym and doing bench press, squats, rows, cleans, these kind of things. They create a great foundation of strength that's important, but they don't create the correct muscle firing patterns that can apply on the ice. And when you see a goaltender and an individual muscle group is not firing as it should and is translating into a technical deficit on the ice, doing more bench presses isn't going to fix that. But the specific exercises that these high-level trainers create for goaltenders, they do what is needed. And it's not just for those who are missing something. It's just in general what's needed for the position. And so, if you're on a team where all they do is put you through these heavy strength workouts all season long, there's something missing. And if it could even probably, I would say it could make things worse for you as well. So the specificity of training is just essential, and it's awesome that we get to see it up there.
That's the kind of insight that you get through In Goal Radio, the podcast, hanging out Net 360 Camp and grabbing some of that and absorbing it. The Eli Wilson camps where you're on the ice and you're just being able to observe the different drills and the different training techniques, the latest trends in save selection. It's a real advantage to you listening to this podcast, and the odd little bit of inside behind the curtain or inside the stall that Kevin Woodley brings. That's your just a little payback to that.
I missed that one. I was like, yeah.
That's all right. That's all right. I'll flush that drill and we'll get on to it. The next one. Let's talk about what's happening over at the Hockey Shop, source for sports Surrey, thehockeyshop.com. You and Cam, did you miss a meal or didn't get your coffee? You guys were absolutely hysterical this week.
I'm not sure where that came from. I think that the level of absurdity that Cam brought to this gear segment at the beginning just spiraled everything out of control from there. But we had some fun. And to be honest with you, if you're not having fun with your gear, then, well, that's a big part of it. And so this is an item that Cam's going to introduce to us today that I don't think I ever thought needed to be fashion forward, but it also combines function in a very important area. So without further ado, let's turn it over to the Hockey Shop and see if Cam wants to explain how it works.
Welcome back to Goalie Utopia here. Today, we've got the brand new Brian's retro style made in Canada double Optik cups. I gotta say, these are pretty stylish and what we would expect nothing else from our friends over at Brian's. Yes. By the way, speaking of stylish, the customizer is live on the new Genetic 5 that'll launch later this fall. Let's get on to the actual jocks. I feel like Hutch, you need to cue up a little Guns N' Roses music as the producer here because I'm going full snakeskin. I've got the matching cowboy boots at home. Unfortunately, I didn't bring them into the shop this morning, Cam, which is good for everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
Totally just kidding. So, we got all kinds of options here. I don't actually even know what that one is. Is this some
White
type of-
snakeskin.
Oh, so like.
So all you white snake fans, yes.
And then this is like a little boudoir type thing for the bedroom.
I was gonna
a
go
little-
with Motley Crue, but yeah.
Your inner tiger, inner animal. Okay, so listen, folks, like sometimes you want to be stylish, even though you can't see this on the ice. It's important to look good in the room for your teammates. Brian's gives you that option with a multitude here. Full out camo gear if you're into the army theme. Little 80s, well, actually, I got the hair for this. Like
I know,
we could go
you're matching.
Full out glam rock, or like I said, a little animal print. Now, behind the fashion, what about the function? Because obviously, as stylish as it is, it doesn't do much good if it doesn't protect the important part. So Cam, walk me quickly through the double. This is a double cup system?
Yeah, I would go as far as saying this is probably the beefiest, most protective cup that we carry. This thing's double thick, 2 full-on cups, lots of additional padding. Like I said, hand-built in Canada, which you normally don't find out of a Gold Jock, that's for sure. This thing is a beast, to say the least. Didn't mean to rhyme there, but honestly, if you're looking for like
the animal print beast. Good job, Cam. We're like full on with the.
I need an adult.
I was gonna say, if it's a beast, it's too much cup for you, Cam. Let's talk about the adjustability on it. I love the fact that both sides have pretty easy elastic, but you can adjust it, make it tighter for us skinny guys. Guys like Cam, you can go right to the end, make sure it's super loose and lots of room in the waistband there. If you've had a few extra cheeseburgers this summer like Cam has, little extra adjustment there. Good, solid unit. Removable cups on the inside layer. So in theory, we have the bulletproof cups that we've had in the past. Can't buy them here. You can buy them online, but you can actually put one of those inside of this.
You can get them here at the Hockey Shop Sports for Sports. You can give me a call, 604-589-8299 or 1-800-567-7790. And check them out at thehockeyshop.com.
He's taken over, folks, because to be honest with you, after that initial display of camouflage, I'm at a loss for words.
You can't see me.
We're going to leave it there.
You listen to that and you get a little bit of a feel for what was happening behind the scenes, but there's a secondary version, sort of like the director's cut of that gear segment with Cam and Woody Hutch.
Yeah, there is. I always do the audio first, and I'm trying to decipher in my brain as I'm just listening to this, what the heck is going on in that room? Because Kevin just uploads a couple of specific audio tracks, and this week I was baffled, but I did my best. I edited it together, and then I matched it up with a video and had a whole lot of fun in the process. But there was so much of it that just doesn't make sense in a podcast format. So we cut out probably 2 or 3 minutes, maybe more. And then I got a little bit silly in how I edited the video on top of that. Come for the cups, but see Woody in cowboy boots would be what I would say. So this week's podcast, what you just heard, everybody, just a tease. Please head over to the In Goal YouTube page or just on ingoalmag.com right below where we've published this podcast episode. We always have the video version of the gear segment, and you really have to see it to believe it this week.
So please tell me on the audio version that you left in some of the White Snake and Guns N' Roses at least.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's a little bit of MTV action in there for sure. But as you can imagine, when this is all about the fashion of your cup, you need far more than audio.
It's half full anyway. We can say that based on what we saw from those two and heard from those two.
Whoa. Cup's full. Thanks, boys.
The feature interview this week, brought to you by Sensorina VR, involves somebody who I greatly admire. I'm a big fan of, and in listening to the conversation with Woody, I'm more enamored with, and that's Jhonas Enroth. I also think it's should be pointed out, he's one of the last guys that wear the number 1. Like there's not many of them out there that kind of wore the number 1 and different photos that I've seen. I don't know whether he's still wearing it right now. I haven't checked, but it's sort of a lost number in our position over the years.
That's me smelling a story. I think it's time for me to dig into
Really?
the archives. Well, you know what? I've had this conversation with a number of guys, and I think I need to expand it a little bit because you're right, Darren. It is kind of disappearing. Like there was that time when it was 1, 30, 31, 35. That was kind of it, right? And now we've got numbers all over the map. In some cases because the one's retired for some places. Hopefully here in Vancouver soon as well, with Roberto Luongo having worn it. But you're right. It's kind of disappearing. I remember once asking Roberto why he wore the number 1. And his answer was because number 1 says it all. I loved it. I just loved and it wasn't cocky, but there was swagger, but not in an arrogant standpoint. Like there was a confidence that when he said that statement, he was kind of joking, but also like there was a confidence there. And you're right. It's kind of disappeared. So over the past couple of years, I have asked guys at various points, why do you wear this number? There's a few that I'm missing. I can't remember the reason for Jacob Markstrom at 25. I think it involves his brother. But a lot of guys are going away from the norms for different personal reasons, in some case, just history. And that might be worth, like I said, smell a story there. Might be worth investigating further at ingoalmag.com in the near future.
Okay, think about it. And we'll come back to it after the conversation with Jhonas Enroth. But off the top of your heads, guys, as you mull this over, how many number 1s are there in the National Hockey League that you can think of? As you let that percolate, Sense Arena VR doing some great things, Hutch.
They sure are. And once again, bringing us our feature interview, and we're very thankful about that. Everybody knows by now that Sense Arena is an absolute game changer for goaltenders. I had a fantastic conversation, guys, this week with an optometrist who focuses on hockey players and sports performance. Won't get too deep into that just yet because we haven't figured out exactly where we're taking this, but we know we're going to have some exclusive content at InGoal. And he uses some virtual reality tools in his practice. And he made the point to me, one that I thought was fascinating. And Sense Arena actually, it gets us making more saves on our feet, just because of the nature of Sense Arena. It's focused on working with your hands more than anything else, with a little bit of movement involved as well. And so we're making a whole lot more saves on our feet. And I think that's a really cool part of Sense Arena and what it brings to us, because what this doctor was telling me was that our visual system works very differently when we have a very different perspective on the puck, trying to make those saves. And that 2 or 3 foot difference between your standing stance and your butterfly is going to make a huge difference to how you track the puck visually. And Sense Arena is actually getting us to do that. So it's extending our ability to track the puck and use our visual systems beyond what we do in a regular training session. Then on top of that, there's all those fantastic cognitive tools that can really expand your visual system, and not just your ability to track one puck, but to track multiple pucks in space, in 3-dimensional space. Just so many tools are available to us, and we're really thankful that Sense Arena is there for us. We've sent along our first video showing how we use it here, and we're going to be sending several more onto them that you'll see on their channels in the next little while. But again, guys, Sense Arena, just a great tool for you off the ice.
And that will tweak Jhonas Enroth's inner gray matter, because he talks about staying on his feet and different things that he's working on and who he's a fan of in the National Hockey League these days. Former National Hockey Leaguer going on a decade and a half in professional hockey, Jhonas Enroth is our feature interview on In Goal Radio, the podcast presented by Sense Arena VR.
We're waiting for hockey to get started here in North America, but it's already up and rolling with training camps overseas. And that means that our guest this week, Jhonas Enroth, is started his 15th season of professional hockey. Playing now with... now, help me with the pronunciation here, Jhonas, because I know it's not as easy sometimes as it just appears.
It's Örebro.
Örebro. My first training camp in Sweden, my first training camp covering the NHL was in Sweden when the Canucks were over there, and that was the Sedin starting, and obviously they're from Orange Koldvik, I probably butchered that, but everyone over there told me just to say Ovik because that was the cheat code. Like, just say Ovik. So I know it's not as simple as it seems. So 15 years, where does the time go? How excited are you to be back there for a second season, and just kind of catch us up on your career over the past few years?
Yeah, I'm super excited. I always tell people the older you get, the more you get excited about a new season. I feel like, and the love for the game just keeps growing for me. And so, I mean, I can't put a good word on it, but I'm super excited to get going again. And we should have a decent team here. Last year, we lost out in Game 7, actually, in the semifinal. So it was pretty close to making it to the final last year. And this year, we should have a similar chance, I think.
Now, that off-season drive, that love for the game, have there ever been moments as you've gone on here, as your career's gone on, like I said, 15 seasons, there have been moments where you've questioned it? And is there a time in the off-season where you know, like, hey, I've got this fire? Or has there ever been times where you're like, man, like, do I want to get back on the ice? Or is that passion always burned?
During the off-season, no, not really. I always have had that fire, I feel like, yeah. Obviously, during a few tough period throughout the career, sometimes I felt like I was not loving the game that much.
Is that the important thing? Like, is the off season, like, and maybe you can walk us through your approach to it, because we've heard from guys like that's the hardest part to get up for is the preparation. Is there, like, do you step away from the game for a certain period of time so that when the pads go back on, you know, you want to put them back on? Like, is there a fear? We see some kids go year round. Do you worry about, you know, not having that time away might make it hard to create that desire?
Yeah, actually, I remember early in my professional career, we used to step away from the ice probably 2-3 months over here in Sweden, and just doing a lot of running and weight training and stuff like that. But last couple of years, I feel like we started to do more specific training, more on the ice, and we were going to all these different goalie schools still. So I feel like the last couple of years I've been on the ice way more than earlier in my career, for sure.
And how has that evolved? Like, walk me through, like, let's go back. Let's go rewind. Let's just start from the beginning. As you know, as someone who listens to the show, I do that sometimes. Where did it all start for you? Where did the passion for the position get started?
I think it must have been my older brother played hockey. He was a skater, obviously, and he probably needed a goalie. So I wanted to be a goalie, and I obviously love the gear and all that stuff. So it's pretty typical route for me to find my way to the net. And like I said, I love hockey, and I especially love goaltending still. So that's definitely my big passion in life.
When did you get started? Growing up in Stockholm, when was your first time putting on the pads on the ice?
It must have been around 10, 11 years old, 12 maybe. I remember I played out probably till I played out for a different team till I was 14 maybe, and I played goal for a different team all the way, obviously, my whole career. But I remember playing out till I was 14 or so, and then from that point it was all goaltending pretty much.
These days we see kids end up in the net, Jhonas, as young as like full-time just goalies, as young as like 7 and 8 in some areas. Do you think there was value there? I mean, looking back, I know it's a long time ago. 14 is almost 20 years ago, but I think there was value to playing out as a young skater, to doing both, to continuing to play as a forward or defenseman.
Yeah, for sure. I think so. I was lucky. I had my goalie partner growing up was Stefan Ridderwall. He was a New York Islanders draft pick in 2006, 6th round or so. But his dad is a former goalie, and he's a very famous goalie here in Sweden, obviously. And he used to tell us to play out for different teams, so we learn how to skate, learn how to read plays and all that stuff. So I think that helped me a lot, especially my when I became a pro, when you had to maybe read plays a little bit more than just drop down and hope for the puck to hit you.
And that was going to be my next question. Is it the benefit there of being the guy that's a part of the play? You learn the patterns from the other side of it a little bit in terms of reading the game. Yeah,
for sure. I like I said, I think that helped me a lot, and I can't thank Rolf and Stefan enough for that, I guess.
Now, you mentioned having him around as a coaching influence. We've heard a lot about sort of goaltending development in Sweden over the years. I've talked to guys like Eddie Lack and Linus Ullmark about their experiences in it. What about for you? Like, obviously, was he your first goalie coach? And what's it like? What was it like over there? Have you done kids camps at all, helping out since you've gone back and seen how it's evolved and how it's changed?
Yeah. Obviously, he was my first coach, and we went to his goalie camps in the summers. Actually, Eddie used to go to those goalie camps too. So I remember Eddie from way back. But back then, like I said, it was just maybe 1 week during the summer we were on the ice. And now I see goalie camps all over the place. I've been to a couple, and I mean, the technique those guys are having right now, it's unbelievable. They're so much better than we used to be in that age.
It's funny because that's a constant theme. If there's one thing, I think I'm now 20 years of sort of talking to goalies on this side of it. And I remember back in like 2003, 2004, when I was just learning, having guys in the NHL talking about going to see kids or watching kids in summer camp. And back then it was like proper leg recovery, right? Like not everyone in the NHL did proper leg recovery, but they go to a goalie school and 12-year-olds did it. It's the constant evolution. The kids always look so much better technically, and yet there's more to it. Like, where do you rank sort of technique among all the different things that go into success as a goaltender, especially success like you've had it, playing in the National Hockey League for 8 years, continuing to play here for 15? Like, where does technique fit amongst all the components that are important to success?
I think it depends who you are. For me, I feel like my technique needs to be spot on to get to the right spot, and I can't mess up that much. Obviously, I'm not a big goalie. I'm just 5'10", so I feel like my technique needs to be spot on. And just make plays from there. If you're a bigger guy, maybe you react to pucks good. Maybe your technique doesn't have to be spot on all the time. But yeah, for me, it has to be very good for me to be successful, I think.
Now, you mentioned 5'10". Obviously, we're in an era where everybody's chasing size. And here you are 15 years into a pro career. Like I said, 8 years in the National Hockey League. And I want to ask you about some specifics of that time, especially with the Sabres. But as the rest of the goalie world's chase 6'4" and 6'5", how have you managed to continue succeeding at 5'10"? Like, what do you see? What advice would you give to a young goaltender who's starting to get these questions already and maybe starting to see some biases because they're not big? What would you tell them about your ability to succeed despite not being huge?
Yeah, I mean, the easy answer is try to not think about it too much. But that's very hard to say, or very easy to say, very, very hard to do. Obviously, I've thought a lot of times throughout my career, but just try to block that out. And I don't feel like I'm small on the ice. I don't feel like I have to. I have stuff to make up. I feel like I'm big enough to make saves. If I give up a goal, I've never thought that was because I was 5'10". It was because I did something else wrong. So I mean, don't try to think about it too much. I guess that's the answer, I think.
Well, and the one thing that I think we can see sometimes that, like, have to be aggressive. Sometimes that mindset can sink in for kids that they have to be aggressive because they're smaller. They have to, quote unquote, to go old school on this, be out there further to cut down the angle a little bit. And yet, I mean, you've probably heard the story. UC Saros plays more conservatively than Pekka Rinne, and Pekka took notes from him. Where has that evolved for you in terms of positioning and the role it plays in your game at different levels? Have you ever felt like you need to be out there further just because of size, or do you think that's a bit of a myth?
I feel like I felt that for sure. I feel like my early years overseas, I felt like I was probably outside the paint a lot. But I feel like I've moved back a little bit the older I got. And last couple of years, I tried to make all the saves on the crease, right on the edge of the crease, where I feel comfortable right now. But earlier, I feel like I had to be out a little bit more. So throughout the career, you try or you always end up making a lot of different paths or technique paths or whatever you want to call it. And I don't know if that makes sense. I guess.
Totally makes sense. You mentioned sometimes earlier in your career in the National Hockey League being outside the paint. Let's go to that. Like when you got drafted, when did the NHL come on your radar before you were drafted and before you came over? Was there a point growing up in Sweden where it's like, hey, this is something, you played for the World Junior team, but like, hey, this is something that I can do at the highest level?
NHL has always been a goal, but probably when I was 16, 17, I started to get picked for the national teams, and I started to do pretty well there. So probably around 16, 17, I felt like I had a good chance. And that's also when I started to hear that I might be a little bit too small. Up till then, I had no idea about that. So around 17, I would say.
And experiences over in Sweden, playing World Juniors and playing on the national team and playing in the development leagues and up to pro there. What was the transition like when you finally came over to North America? I mean, the game is different. The ice sheets are different. What was easy? Were there things about having played in Sweden that you thought made it easier to play pro, or were there other adjustments? What was the easy part? What was the tough part?
I honestly think it's easier to play on a smaller ice surface. You have to move a little bit less. Everything, it just happens a little bit quicker. It's easier to stay in games over there, I felt like. The tough part was just outside the rink, I think, coming over to the States. I was pretty young. I came over as a 20-year-old. So that was the toughest part. On the ice, I felt fine right away. And I think the Sabres really had a plan for me, because I played a lot of games my first 3 years over there in the minors. So they gave me a chance, and I'm thankful they did.
Now, what the off the ice part, is there anything like just adjusting to a new culture, new people, new friends? I think sometimes we forget just how, especially, Sweden, having been there myself, like everyone speaks fluent English for the most part. But there still is a culture shock coming over. Well, what was the toughest part of that?
I think just don't have any friends or teammates that you knew from before. All my teammates, my first couple of years were Canadians and Americans. So that was a little bit tough. I didn't have a Swede or a Finn or anyone around me in my first couple of years. So I think that was the toughest part. I was new to everything. I was new to the adulthood, I guess. I didn't know how to set up my bank account, all that stuff. And first, I didn't really have anyone to help me with all that stuff. So that was the tough part, I think.
What about on the ice? You said the adjustment was easier there. The game comes a little quicker on the small ice. Were there technical things that evolved in your game as you came over here? Things you were asked to do differently? Things you were learning for the first time? Or
no, not really. I just remember from that time that we started every practice with like a 15, 20-minute goalie skate with the goalie coach. We started with that in camp. Ryan Miller is obviously a great skater, and for me to just go up there and skate for 15, 20 minutes every day. But I felt like that really helped my game.
Now, was that new to you, that kind of thing? Like, because again, like it's hard to know sometimes. I'm trying to think of time frames, what it was like. We talk a lot about the goalie development paths in Sweden. Did you not have as many goalie sessions over there, or just the way they set it up over here?
We did, but I felt like we did more shooting drills and more just making saves. I think in Buffalo there, we really put a lot of emphasis on the skating part. And I felt like I got a lot better my first couple of years skating-wise over there overseas.
And I got to be honest here, I didn't look it up, but top of my head, I want to say, is that Jim Corsi around that time in terms of goalie coach?
Yes, that's Jim Corsi. I had him for 6 years there in Buffalo, my first 6 years in the organization. And great person and a great goalie coach too.
Well, when you say skating, walk us through this a little bit. What types of drills? Was it different than the type of, because we think of goalie skating, I think non-goalies think of it one way. And then a lot of times goalies think about it as just crease movement, right? Just moving around the crease spot to spot to spot. And yet we've seen an evolution, a lot more edge control and dynamic skating drills. And Jim was a little, came from a different generation, a little older school. So I remember some of the guys, there'd be like stuff out to the blue line and back. What was skating sessions like for you when you first came over?
It was definitely a lot of crease work, just hitting different points. We were doing the W, the K drill, and all that stuff. He made up all the names for them. But we also did some skating up to the blue line, and just being a good skater overall. Yeah, it was a good mix, I think. But we didn't do any. Obviously, we didn't do any reverse VH or anything like that back then.
Well, when did that start to get introduced to you? I was going to say, because around when you came over, VH would have been popular. I want to say that's probably around 03, 04. And was that something that was already in your game as well? Post plays become so big. Is it a massive factor? Is it as big a factor for you now as it was then? Is it more of a factor now? How's that evolved over the years for you?
Well, I remember it vividly because I saw a lot of the talk online from Sweden, how they played it and all that stuff. And I went back one summer and just contacted one of the goalie coaches here and told me I wanted to skate with him and learn this new technique. And yeah, we did that in the summer. And then I came back to camp after the summer and I kind of showed it to Millsy and Jim. And we started working on it over there too. And that was obviously the same time it became more popular overseas too. But that must have been around 2011, maybe, or around that time.
Well, so you would have been a little ahead of the curve actually then, because I want to say it sort of became popular in the NHL. Jonathan Quick used it a lot in 2012 when they won their first cup, and that's when I think, if I could be wrong, but I think that's when we saw a lot of people adopt it. And yet, as you said, we knew it was already being used SMS over in Sweden. So fascinating to hear that you went over there and sought it out. What was that process like in terms of, learning something so different and new for the first time? And if you don't mind, who was the coach over there that helped you through it?
It was Mikael Wernbloom. He's actually assistant GM now for one of the top teams here in Sweden. But no, it felt like it made sense. I felt like I was comfortable with it right away. And to me, to be honest, again, I think it makes more sense on the small ice surface than it does over here, because I feel like I need to stay more on my feet on the bigger ice over here. So to me, it felt like it made more sense to play that way overseas.
You talk about staying on your feet more over there. Is that part of your game that's evolved as you've had to come back? There's so much, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but from the outside, it feels like there's a lot of east-west, and that patience and beating plays on your skates would become even more important.
Yeah, exactly. Now I'm just trying to beat everything on my skates, stay on my feet as long as possible, and I don't think I did that when I was younger. When I was younger playing in NHL, I probably slid a little bit more and didn't stay on my feet that much.
That's probably an evolution that we've seen over here too. As the games become east-west, it's become increasingly important. We hear a lot from the goalie coaches and the people that evaluate goaltending, that ability to beat plays, to be set, to be square is more and more important. So it sounds like everywhere. Mm-hmm. What for you, are there any keys you can pass along? Is it a mindset? Obviously you can practice it, but how do you get better at it? If young goalies are listening to Jhonas Enroth today, as a goalie who skates really well and moves really well and is good at that part of the game, how would you focus on it? How would you focus on improving it?
Well, for me, it starts off the ice. I want to feel quick off the ice. I do some ladder work and all that stuff off the ice. And then on the ice, it just try to beat everything on your feet. You're going to get beat 5-hole and all that stuff. But if you can really try to push yourself and stay up a little bit longer, I think you have a lot to gain.
So do you use that? Is that become a mindset for you, Jhonas, in practice? Even if I do get the odd one go through, this will be a focal point I'm going to work on today? Yeah,
pretty much. My teammates sometimes give me a little bit hard time about that, telling me I don't go down in practice, but I'm doing it because I want to have better patience. And I don't know, they don't really understand what I'm trying to do, but I feel like that's a big key for a goalie, for a smaller goalie. I watch a lot of other NHL goalies, and a guy that is super good on his feet is Jonathan Bernier, I think, and he has great patience, and I like to watch him a lot and try to pick up some techniques and stuff from him.
Okay, so there's another goalie who's had an incredible career. And, I just had this discussion with an NHL evaluator the other day, probably doesn't get drafted if he was in the draft today, again, because of size. And look at the career he's had. Look at the success he continues to have. Do you feel like there's something missing there if that's the way we're looking at things, and yet you can still have success playing that way?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not stupid. I know the bigger you are, the greater chance you're gonna have to make a save. But you gotta pick the best goalie available, I think. And if a guy who's 5'10" better than the guy who's 6'7", maybe you should pick the 5'10" guy if you ask me. But yeah, I mean that's obviously a pretty loaded question for me. But,
yeah. Sorry. Well, I just find it fascinating, and I like. It seems to me that some of those elements that you talked about. I mean, the ability to skate, the ability to move, the patience, the fact that your technique needs to be spot on. Maybe because there's less margin for error early on, the focus. I just find that goalies tend to be better at those things, in that 6 foot range, and so yeah.
But there is a lot of big guys that move really well, and if you can move like them, then you probably have a good chance to make it to the NHL.
Okay, so you had never heard about size at all, wasn't in your mind until you're drafted. Didn't seem to be a problem getting started. First year in Buffalo, 11-12, first full season. You make the all-rookie team in the National Hockey League. Was there a welcome to the NHL moment earlier in your career where it was like a shooter or a situation in that first year where it kind of was like, wow, I'm here?
Well, yeah, I think the year prior to that, I played my first game, and it was against the Bruins, and the Bruins won that year, I think. But on the very first shot, Mark Recchi tipped the shot in from Zdeno Chara. So it was 2 Hall of Famers that scored on me right away. So that was probably like the first moment of NHL I really remember.
And what was the, like, again, as your game's evolving in those early years, what was the focal point for you in terms of your game and trusting your game, trusting the things that had given you success would continue to give you success, and yet probably being open to evolution and change in those early years under Jim?
No, we were just talking about try to be patient and work on my skating game a lot. It's been a while, so can't really remember all that stuff from back then. But that's the biggest part I remember from Jimmy and those early years.
And sort of through Buffalo, I mean, it's been tough times in Buffalo of late. But what are your memories of the city and playing for that fan base, and being teammates with Ryan Miller in the early going there? What do you remember about that era?
Great memories. Obviously, we didn't have a good time on the ice throughout those years, but I mean, the city is awesome, the fans are awesome, the people there are awesome, and obviously Ryan Miller is an awesome person too, and he taught me a lot from during those years, and it's a person I've always looked up to a lot, and I've been following his career obviously since our past split. So Ryan is definitely one of the guys I always looked up to, and I always wanted the best for him, even after playing with him.
Do you follow guys still? Like, obviously it's a 9-hour time difference, but I know you're a fan of the game. Do you pay much attention to the NHL? Since you've gone back.
Yeah. I watch pretty much everything. I try to watch all the highlights and all that stuff. Like I said, I truly love the game, and I watch as much as I can, and especially goalies.
Okay, so you mentioned Bernier as a guy, but are there anybody who else do you love to watch?
Obviously, Vasilevsky is awesome to watch. I think his compete level and the way he solve different situations is pretty impressive, and obviously his technique is super good. But also obviously Jussi Saros I watch a lot, obviously because he's a smaller guy. I tend to watch pretty much all the smaller guys actually in the NHL. If maybe Demko playing against Bishop, maybe I don't watch that game. So I try to tune in when there are smaller guys and guys I really enjoy watching.
Now, I got to ask, is that just because you enjoy watching them, or are you looking for anything at this point? Even 15 years into your career, are you watching guys and taking notes on how they approach situations?
No, I'm no, I'm watching to take notes. I'm trying to get better, and there's always some stuff you can pick up. I mean, the goalie in Carolina now, or he got traded to Detroit. I'm blanking on his name right now.
Alex Nedeljkovic, yeah.
Yes, I enjoy watching him a lot, and just to watch his puck handling skills too, because he's great with that, and he's definitely a goalie I've started watching more lately.
Now, I mean I think that's fantastic. Not just advice and a lesson for young kids. Like here you are 15 years into your career and you're still watching other goalies looking for ways to get better. Any examples that you can think of off the top of your head over the past few years where you've watched a guy handle something, a certain way and thought, I'm going to try that in practice, or it's something that different enough that you maybe incorporate it into your game or at least give it a shot?
I can't really come up with anything right now, but I guess, I mean, I kind of stay up to date on everything, so nothing really surprised me that much, maybe. But
right,
I like to watch how goalies play down by the post, how if they stay on their feet, if they play VH or reverse VH, and especially on during the penalty kills, how they solve all those low plays on the PKs.
Okay, so you mentioned, I want to switch a little bit here away from sort of looking back at career, but you mentioned gear, and you may have ended up in the net because of your brother, the younger brother goes in net, right? But also equipment. So when did you, would you consider yourself a gear geek at this point, or were you a gear geek? Were you looking for the newest things?
Yeah, I mean, I've always looked for the newest thing, and I love the gear, obviously, still. I actually love my battle gear right now, and I feel like the battle gear is perfect for my style right now.
Now, what do you like about it is we've seen a massive evolution in gear, and you've sort of been through the different eras as pads went. As you came over, that was probably just as pads were getting sort of one solid core and things like that. Now we're into knee stacks attached to pads, and with the ultrasonic and with the hyperlights, you're into the materials that slide better and make the puck come off with active rebounds. Like, what do you love about, or what do you like most? What's the biggest evolution in your mind over the past couple of years with equipment?
I think I really got hooked on the stable knee stack that the Bowers or the Ultrasonics had last year. I thought that they are super stiff in the right place and soft in the right place. Way better than my old Lefebvre pads. So that, I think the knee stack is probably the biggest difference the last couple of years, at least for me, I feel like.
The concept of active rebounds on purpose, was that something that you embraced? Like, do you think it's universal at this point, or was when it was first starting? Because I think too, Reebok had some, as far back as P4s, I remember they were trying to make more active rebounds. Like, is that a positive for a goaltender still, or do you think teams have adjusted to where those rebounds are going now as well?
No, I think it's a positive for the goalie. I can tell using my pads how they just fly off there, and it's pretty nice to see the puck kick out of the zone. I mean, you buy yourself a lot of time with those rebounds, I feel like.
Hey, now speaking of gear, did you get a kick out of seeing your glove still being in the NHL 3 years after you'd gone back home?
Yeah. I mean, that was awesome. I've actually, I think Mike Smith used to use one of my gloves too in one of the World Championships a few years ago, or probably 10 years ago now. But that was pretty funny that I saw Mackenzie Black wear it too.
Now, when you first saw it, did you try and figure out how it happened?
No. I mean, I kind of figured, or I could take a guess that he probably liked it, or the CCM guy only had that glove and he tried it in practice and probably liked it and didn't want to switch till he got his own. So I wasn't really surprised, but it used to be a little bit different, or that glove used to be not that popular. I feel like it's more popular now lately, but yeah, it was a couple of years there when not too many guys used to wear that glove.
Now, what you've switched, like I said, you're in the Bauer gear now. Which, if you don't mind us sharing with us, which glove break do you like on there? Because, in terms of being similar to that feel.
Yeah, they tried to make me a similar to the 580 glove, but it didn't work out for me at all. And I went back to one of their stock gloves. I think it's a 60-degree break or something like that. Just one of their stock gloves. It feels fine to me. And like I said, I'm really happy with my Bauer gear right now.
The one thing we never talk about with guys is blocker. We talk about the pads and the puck. Wait, like you're switched over to Bauer. So do you notice the difference in the blocker and the way pucks come off of that thing as well?
Yeah, of course. The puck shoots up that thing too. And it's pretty light. I haven't had any issues with it at all. So I obviously like the blocker too a lot. So it's definitely a huge advantage when you can get the puck out of the zone or far away from you at least.
Now, hey, one of the other things too, you talked about at the beginning about having that passion to get back on the ice and being excited to go back into your 15th season. One of the things I've noticed, because we definitely follow you on all your social media channels, is a passion for biking as well in the off season. Now, do you mix that in season too, or is that pretty much an off season activity? What do you love about cycling? Because it looks like you're pretty into it. I know Darren Millard, our host, his ears will be perked up here because he does a lot of cycling down in Las Vegas as well.
Oh, really? Well, yeah, I like to get out there when I get a chance. During this season, obviously, I can't really get out that much, but sometimes I have a day off or something like that, and I get out there if the weather is good. And yeah, cycling, I got into it probably 10 years ago from now. And I mean, it's just a feeling of freedom, and just being out in the open air is pretty nice. And yeah, it's a lifestyle now. I've cut back a little bit because I think I biked a little bit too much a couple of summers ago, and I felt like I wasn't really ready for the startup of the season with all the cycling I've been doing. So I kind of cut it back on it a little bit lately. But yeah, I mean, after when my career is done, that's probably what I'm going to be doing.
Now, you talk about the freedom and loving that. Now, I was curious because you were putting in some serious kilometers, right? This wasn't out for a ride with the kids in the neighborhood kind of thing. This was real road cycling. But I did wonder because, with time, cycling can sort of shorten hip flexors, right? Like it's something that all hockey players do, but we've heard not necessarily great for goalies. Did you have exercises you had to make sure you were doing to sort of, counterbalance that? As much as it can be great for leg strength, did you have to be careful not to sort of shorten up those hip flexors?
Exactly. That's what I noticed a couple of years ago. So I probably told myself to probably cut down a little bit on the cycling and just try to train a little bit more towards my actually job, I guess. So yeah, you definitely have to stretch them out well and do some hip work. But honestly, I haven't had any problems at all with my hips throughout my years, and I know a lot of other guys have had a lot of hip problems. So I've been pretty lucky with that.
Now, you watch like Tour de France? Are you watching Olympics? Are you watching when you're into it like that? I know that means you're probably really into it. What do you like watching for pro cycling and Olympic cycling? Track guy, road race guy?
Yeah, no, road race for sure. I don't watch track, but I mean, it's a pretty big team sport. Actually, you don't really think about it, but they need their teammates, and they depend on their teammates a lot. And it's always exciting to see what teams are in good shape or in good form at that time. So I think that's what's the most exciting, to see how the team is doing and who can put their guy in the right position to win the race.
Last one, we've kept you here too long, but you also know I'm famous for last ones. Were there other sports growing up? Like I love to explore the other passions. Did you play other sports growing up? Any in particular? And were there any that you think, kind of like playing out for a longer period of time helped you as a goaltender?
Yeah, I played soccer growing up. I was a goalie there too, so probably a little bit undersized for that sport too.
Hey, listen, I think everybody is undersized because those nets are way too big. That's on the Olympics. It scares me to see a net that big.
Yeah. And obviously, I played roller hockey for a little bit. I played floorball. That's a Swedish sport we have over here. And I played bandy. That's another Swedish sport we have over here, too. So I played a lot of different sports.
Would that be a message if we were looking for advice for young kids? Do you think that's important at a time when specialization is increasing? Do you think that was important for you to be so active in all those other sports?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, just look at Vasilevsky. I was talking about his technique and his compete level earlier. He's an unbelievable athlete, I think. He can do pretty much anything with his body, and that's probably from playing a lot of different sports growing up.
You know what? I did say last one, but I do have one more because I suck at this. My apologies, Jhonas. But I didn't ask you, what's going from playing in the NHL for, like I said, for 8 years, parts of 8 years, going over to Sweden, and we hear a lot about the goalie coaching over there and how much, support there is for the position. That kind of been identified as a leader in terms of how much support they give the position. How has your relationships with goalie coaches changed over the years? And what do you like about the way, if there's a couple of examples of the way they manage things over there now, playing there for the past couple of years in the top pro league?
It's definitely super. It's all about the technique over here. I think it's not too many goalie coaches that have actually played on a high level over here. I think all of them are just very good teachers. They are very educated. And I mean, they see stuff I don't see in video. So, I mean, you can learn a lot from people that just are coaches, I think. So it's definitely a little different. I remember over in North America, when I was there, it was a little bit more guys that played that was goalie coaches. So, yeah, it's a little bit different for sure, I think. It's, like I said, it's a little bit more technical driven over here.
Now, do you end up with some back and forth? Because obviously there's a technical component of watching video, but then as we started talking about 40 minutes ago, reads. So is there a back and forth there where you're explaining, is there still an element of give and take and read and baiting and all those old school elements that conversation takes place?
Of course. I think the key is definitely give and take a little bit. You're going to trust yourself and just still got to play your own game. And, I can end up with the quote Jim Corsi always told me. He always used to tell me that you're a hockey player dressed like a goalie. Just play hockey.
I love it. That is a perfect way to end. Jhonas, thanks so much for taking the time. I miss seeing you here in locker rooms, although like most goalies, they probably don't miss seeing me with all these annoying questions. But congratulations on all the success over there, and love that you still have the passion for this after 15 years, and look forward to another one of these conversations a couple more years down the road. We'll put that cycling career on hold for a little while yet, okay?
Yes, sounds good. Thanks for having me, and keep up the good work. You guys are doing a great work with all the podcasts and all the content you guys are spitting out.
Thank you so much. That means a lot to hear. Thanks, Jhonas.
All right, thank you.
That is a cool cat. Like that, Jhonas, I'm going to speak to you directly here. A great conversation with Kevin. Appreciate your time. But Jhonas, I want to hang out with you. Like, I just want to sit there and talk goaltending, because there's some people who love being a goaltender, love being a professional athlete, but he's kind of into it, but he's not like extreme. And it's just be a neat person to just take a couple hours and hang out and talk goaltending.
Well, you guys could do it while you're on the bike, because we talked about that a little off air. I know how passionate he is about cycling, and I know you shared that passion as well. And we talked a little bit about that as well after we and again, fascinating there. It was a question I'd want to ask him for years, was about, hey, like biking's great as a goalie, it builds your leg strength and everything, but you got to be careful not to shorten those hip flexors with too much biking. And he was very conscious of that, and maybe having done it for a period of time. So thanks to him for the time. Thanks to him for carrying the conversation early due to some things that were going on around me at home as we got started. Actually, not at home, on the road. As I did that, I did not have my A game. I would have been relegated to the minors with my not so much my preparation, but my ability to focus and guide the conversation. And he absolutely carried us.
I never noticed. That's a good thing. You know what? The control room can be on fire, but the anchor never knows it, and that's exactly what I felt there. That was just an interesting conversation. And he wore number 1. I asked you guys going into the interview, can you think of a number 1? We may not have one in the National Hockey League this year.
So has anybody looked it up? Because I know we weren't supposed to cheat. I know Thomas Greiss used to wear it with the Islanders. Does he still wear it in Detroit? Because I can't remember. That was the only one I could think of.
Didn't look it up. I just had LB having worn it for a while and earlier in his career as well.
I don't know for sure, but I think number 1's retired in Detroit.
Oh, no kidding. Duh.
Yeah.
Very Sawchuk.
So there you go on that front. But I don't know whether there is one somebody that's going to wear a number 1, which it'd be just we'll have to keep an eye on it going forward. So Hutch, would you wear number 1? Because part of it is it's kind of
absolutely,
yeah.
And even more since I wore number 1 for a long time, and I just love what he said about Lou. You know, the number says it all. But I sort of think of that not so much as a cocky thing for Lou, but it says it all for all of us in the position. Like, it's the most important position on the ice, and you're wearing that for the entire goalie union. So I love it for that reason.
And I do wear number 1. And when I quit my beer league team, it will be retired because I manage the beer league team, so I don't have to give the jersey back.
I wouldn't. I just think it looks too skinny and tall. I need a little bit of balance out there.
I need to be made to look skinny.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing.
That's awesome. Thanks to Jhonas Enroth. That's why you keep coming back to this podcast, because you get to rub shoulders with some of the cool people in and around our game, and the fact that he's a fan of our game and fan of goaltenders and watches people and sees what they can do in Nedeljkovic, puck handling and small goaltenders like Jonathan Bernier, because he stays on his feet. It's really neat exposure, and be able to look at the world through the eyes of a National Hockey League goaltender, former National Hockey League goaltender in Jonas's case. Have a good trip up to Kelowna and the Net 360 camp there, pal Hutch.
Thank you very much. You have a safe trip home to Vegas from Tokyo, and enjoy the last day of the games.
I'm
Thanks
going
for
to
making the time in the middle of the night, Darren. What time is it there right now?
It is. What time is it here right now? I'm going to say, let me just pull up my clock, because I don't have it up. We are talking about 10 to 4 in the morning. 10 to 4.
10 to 4 in the morning. There's a guy who's doing it for the goalie union.
Yeah. I'm going to get some sleep now, but I have my Sensorina headset on the plane. My eyes might be closed behind it just for a little bit too. Just for a little bit. Woody, you be well. Thanks to Jhonas. Thanks to Cam. And thanks to you for listening. You are number 1 to us for being with us on this great journey through the wide world of goaltending.